Baby Boomer Tales. Glad to have you riding along today. Do you like our new intro music? I like it so much I decided to play the whole thing for you right then and there. You can find us at babyboomertales.com. You can hear our podcast there, buy our book there, purchase our famous Baby Boomer Tales coffee mug there, see pictures of the country I talk so much about on this podcast. Our song of the week is Ain't No Sunshine. It was written and recorded by Bill Withers. He wrote this song after watching the movie Days of Wine and Roses, starring Lee Remick and Jack Lemmon. It was recorded and released in 1971 and made it to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts. The amazing thing about this is Withers was working at a factory making bathrooms for 747s when he wrote and recorded this iconic song. In 1972, it won a Grammy for the Best R&B Song. Rolling Stone magazine ranks it as number 285 of the 500 greatest songs of all times. And She's Always Gone Too Long anytime she goes away. Our unusual fact this week: the first match was made in 1826. However, the first lighter was made in 1823. Go figure. Wouldn't you think it'd be the other way around, like by 100 years or something? I'm amazed by that fact. Okay, well, anyway, on with what we have to talk about today. We're smack dab right in the middle of January now, in the great year of 2023. I'm planning on having a great year. How about you? How about you? Let's have a great year. You know, about 90% of if it's a good year or bad year falls right between your two ears. I know things happen, but that's called life. Things happen, good and bad. Don't dwell on the bad, for goodness sakes. Embrace the good. Fight that bad with everything you have. Don't succumb to it. I know things can get hard. I know that. I've experienced some of that myself. If my demographics are right here on this podcast, a big part of my listening audience, you all that's right along with me today and other days, well, a bunch of you are baby boomers. That means that you're, at least in your 60s, and things happen in life. You've lived long enough now to experience that. And all I can say is, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. I'm looking out my window and the sun is so bright that it's kind of snow blinded me here. The ground's all covered in snow and stuff here. My pond is frozen. Pretty day. But while I was doing that little monologue at the beginning, I was just looking out the window while I was doing it, kind of ad-libbing what I was going to say. Now I look back at my notes and I can't even see them. You know how that works? You come inside from being out in the snow on a sunny day and you just can't see anything for a while. Everything's kind of black. So I can't see my notes. They're kind of coming back into focus now. Let me see. Where was I? I like to say that, don't I? When I was a little boy, up on the hill in that little small town I lived in north central Colorado Rocky Mountains, up on the hill where my house was, when you looked to the east, you saw a mountain range that looked like a man laying down. The whole mountain range there, right to the east of town, looked like that. I remember my mom pointing me that way and showing me that when I was very small. And she explained to me that that was Abraham Lincoln, that it looked just like Honest Abe laying up there, with his hands folded over his chest, laying there like he was maybe dead. Maybe dead. 'Cause if old Abe slept like I sleep, he'd be sleeping on his stomach and his hands would be above his head and legs would be sprawled out. And, you know, I don't know how you sleep, but that's how I sleep. I've got to stop looking outside. I'm turning my back to my window. It's so pretty, though. It's so pretty out there. Well, anyway, this mountain range that Abraham Lincoln was laying on, old Honest Abe, the man in the mountain there, is all part of the Indian Peaks Wilderness Area. And part of that mountain range there is in the national park up there where I was born and raised. His head faced north and his feet were to the south of that. You can actually see the whole thing, his knees kind of coming up and the whole thing. These peaks that made up that silhouette of that man laying in the mountain are probably my favorite mountain range that there is. Now, you have to excuse me, I've seen other mountains besides the Rockies, but not much, you know. The Sierra Nevadas and like Mount Shasta and some of that stuff, the Appalachians, the Smokies to a small extent. But the Rockies are definitely my favorite, and the Indian Peaks are my favorite range in the Rockies. But you know, there's Pikes Peak down by Colorado Springs that's very dynamic, for lack of a better word. It's almost more dynamic to me to go up it than to look at it from like town or something. It's so massive and so huge, you kind of lose track of how high it is. There's also the Collegiate Mountain Range down close to South Park in Colorado, which is in the middle of the state. Really almost square dab smack in the middle of the state of Colorado. But there's a peak that I can see from my parents' old house there called Byers Peak that kind of stands by itself, and it has a dynamic nature to it also. So mountain peaks are beautiful and stunning and spectacular, and it doesn't matter what time of year. Usually most of these peaks have snow on them through the summer, the glaciers. But in the wintertime when they're white, set against that bright blue sky in Colorado, and the green of the trees is amazing. The only thing that's more amazing is in the summertime where they actually look purple against the sky. They're very beautiful. But anyway, back to old Abe. Either you can see Abe or you can't. That's just the way it is. Either you can see him or you can't. And believe it or not, there are people that cannot see that for whatever reason. They just, you see these things on Facebook where left-handed people say this is a dog and right-handed people say it's a goose, and it doesn't look like either one to you. Well, one of those things, I'm sure. I had a friend and she could not see that at all. I tried to sit down. We'd sit in the park, and I'd say, now, okay, now his head's over to your left, and see, there's his forehead, and slants down, and then his nose, and then his chin with his little beard, and you keep going to your right there, and there's his chest with his arms crossed. Yeah. So you see it? No, I can't see it. I should contact her and ask her if she ever got to see that so many people do and so many people talk about. She still lives up there. That would be kind of a funny thing to not be able to see that. And nothing bad or anything, it's just how your brain processes things, I do believe. That's why some people like modern art, because they can see something in it that I can't. Sorry, Jackson Pollock. Is that his name? Andy Warhol. I can see those soup cans. I can see those soup cans. Whatever, I was blessed enough to be able to see the man in the mountain. The old man in the mountain. The old man in the mountain that watches out over us all that live there and stay there, and our hearts are there. He watches out for us. You can see him from so many angles. Like I said, right from my front yard, you could see him crystal clear. You could see him from the park. You could see him from basically anywhere in town as long as a building's not in front of you. My best view of him that I think of is there's a scenic overlook up at one of the lakes going to the north towards the national park that you can see his whole thing, including his feet, which are some very jagged peaks. I speak about going up to Crater Lake, Dave and I, one time, and we packed in beer and steaks and I think a little hibachi and all this stuff to have a good time, and we were exhausted by the time we got up there, and it started raining. It rained for days. But there at Crater Lake, you're right at the foot of those peaks, and you just have to look straight up, and it's very, very spectacular to see that. And it's not a terrible hike up if you're not packing more than you should. His feet being so jagged, besides the silhouette of Abraham Lincoln, the feet always amaze me. These peaks are called the Indian Peaks because of one reason. One of the peaks is Navajo. One of the peaks is Apache. One is Shoshone. One is Arapaho. One's Kiowa. Another is Ogallala. Another is Pawnee, plus several others. It's an amazing sight and something that you'll carry with you forever and ever. There are pictures of Abe on our website, babyboomertales.com. One of them is a spectacular sunrise, I do believe, that my cousin Melissa took, and I asked if I could post it like on Facebook and my webpage, and she was kind enough to say yes. And that's the first picture you see when you get to my website, but it is one of several on there of Abe Lincoln. Honest Abe, perhaps the best president this great country of ours ever had. What a way to honor the man. What a way to honor the peoples that first had this land. No wonder I identify with Native Americans so much. I know I can't feel it, the pain and the loss, but they never ever really lost it because they didn't own it. And a Native American will be the first to tell you that we, us European Americans, looked at things differently. I own 25 acres. 200 years ago, whoever lived on this patch of ground that I built my home on would no more think that he owned this than to think that he was God. It was a wonderful way to live, and yet, they had their problems too. When all of us Europeans showed up, they had bigger problems, though. It kind of makes me sad, but all things must change. Let us never forget that. Kindness is more than just an attitude or some words. It should be a way of life. I'll be back next Wednesday. Peace out.